Good afternoon. The Cuyahoga County Finance and Budgeting Committee meeting for Monday, January 29th, 2004 will please come to order. And Janine, would you please call the roll?
And just as a reminder to all who are in attendance, this meeting is being recorded and live streamed on the county's YouTube page. Calling the roll, Mr. Miller.
Here.
Mr. Jones. Mr. Jones is absent at the moment. Mr. Gallagher.
Here.
Mr. Shrine. Mr. Shrine is absent at the moment. Mr. Kelly.
Here.
Ms. Turner.
Present.
There is a quorum. Also like the record to reflect that Councilwoman Conwell is in attendance.
Thank you very much. And has anybody signed in for public comment?
No, Mr. Chair, no one is signed in.
Thank you. And item number 4 on our agenda is approval of the minutes from the October 2nd, 2023 meeting.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Been moved and seconded to approve the minutes from October 2nd. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed say no. The ayes have it, and the minutes are approved. There are no matters referred to the committee in the form of legislation, so we'll go on to our 2 discussion items. The first item centers around the project proposals and the financial impact of the City of Cleveland's tax increment financing. The City of Cleveland envisions an ambitious economic development program to be funded in part through tax increment financing. We all embrace Mayor Bibb's effort to improve Greater Cleveland, but are also concerned about potential impacts on county revenues. Hopefully, we can find ways to move this program forward and also mitigate the impacts on the county's social services. Cleveland's Director of Integrated Development, Jeff Epstein, will explain to us what the City of Cleveland has in mind. And then Katie Gallagher will provide some administration perspective on potential impacts.
Good
Thank you very
afternoon,
much
council
for
members. I'm joined by
coming.
Jessica Trevisano from our team, who's been working on this as well and is going to help me with the presentation.
Okay, great.
So I have some slides to share with the council and some remarks I just wanted to make up front in terms of highlighting the reason why we're here in terms of county impact. And a couple points I want to make up front before I get into the kind of the why and the what. First is that unlike TIFs, other TIFs that you may be familiar with, this particular TIF is a new TIF to Cleveland, but it is for public improvement only. So the funding that is generated by these proceeds cannot go to a private developer, cannot go to stadiums. It is for public infrastructure only. Also wanted to point out the city is dedicating a substantial share of our potential future revenue to the city after CMSD. If you break the county pieces apart, get the second largest share of tax revenue. This is also, as other TIFs, for increase in value only. So taxing jurisdictions will not see any reduction in current tax proceeds or lose funding out of pocket. And we anticipate, based on the investments that we're making through the TIF district, that ultimately we will see an increase in tax proceeds. The economic impact, which I'll walk through in a little bit, we believe will offset the potential future impact of the TIF district capturing increased revenues with over 30,000 jobs and billions of dollars of sales tax revenue. The strategy also importantly does not take away dollars from voted levies or impact bond debt. It's the natural appreciation of value on voted levies will still occur and the millage adjusts such that voted levies will receive the same amount regardless of whether we put the TIF in place. We also believe, and I'll outline momentarily, that these funds will go towards a number of priorities that are shared priorities between the county and the city. Our lakefront, our riverfront, our downtown, our neighborhood parks. These are all critical projects that we've worked with the county on and are excited about advancing and strengthening our region. And I think more broadly, the frame for this is positioning ourselves for growth. We don't want to be in the business of managing decline. And in order to do that, we need to make some big investments on growth and on growing the pie. Otherwise, we're going to be fighting over the same declining pool of tax revenue with increased costs. I also want to make clear in doing that we're talking about growth, and if we don't create the growth, there's no new tax revenue. So to a certain extent, when we think about TIFs, 100% of zero is zero. If there's no growth, there's no additional tax revenue to go around and to share. And we can't grow the pie without making the investments that are contemplated here. This is a tool that has been used elsewhere, and I'll share a little bit more in a moment. In addition, in Cincinnati and Columbus, the City of Independence has TIF districts. The City of Berea is exploring them. So other municipalities within Cuyahoga County have done this. And to a certain extent, we have seen in the City of Cleveland 50 years of businesses and residents leaving the core of our county, leaving the core of the city and moving outward. And we need this reinvestment for our infrastructure to reverse those years of disinvestment and to strengthen a downtown neighborhood, which is the economic engine and core of the county. And as a population is larger than many municipalities in the county, we have 22,000 residents today, growing on 30. So with that as background, I want to walk through, if you could pull up the slides, the background on the district. This is a part of a broader economic development strategy, an equitable economic development strategy that Mayor Bibb is pursuing with several goals. One, improving quality of life for our residents, for our businesses, and being able to attract more. And there's a number of other strategies. Our council right now is looking at the Residents First legislation to improve the quality of the built environment and our neighborhoods. We are making huge investments through our RISE initiative in public safety. We are working on affordable internet access. And this project will fit in with all of that by really making us truly a true waterfront city. We are working to drive economic development for the city and county. The Site Readiness for Good Jobs Fund is a $50 million initiative for the city to advance that. We're moving in the southeast side, and we believe this will position the city and drive us towards more economic growth in our core. We are also investing in our neighborhoods. There's many improvements right now underway through our Back to Basics programs and rec centers, and we envision this as a way to grow tax base downtown to be able to strengthen and further strengthen our neighborhoods. And then finally, a lot of our strategies around creating equitable access to our waterfronts and to public spaces across the city. So we've been working on Cheers and on Irishtown Bend and on riverfront projects in collaboration, our waterfront projects in collaboration with the county in Collinwood. This is a way to advance that downtown. And when we look at the kind of the core of this strategy, the shore to core to shore TIF district, it is connecting and strengthening our waterfront, adding a 25-acre public park, adding new land and development north of the Shoreway, connecting our downtown. It is adding millions of square feet of development along our river and creating access. If you think about downtown and our connection to our waterfronts, they are adjacent to downtown, but they are not really part of downtown. And there is huge economic power, not just in terms of attracting businesses and residents, but for our existing stakeholders, for existing communities to better connect to that, as well as connecting and strengthening the core. We are coming out of COVID. Downtown recovery is not all the way back. We need to make critical investments so that we can make office workers think more about why they're going to come downtown 4 days versus 3 days, 5 days versus 3 days. We need to give them reasons. And those reasons are access to public space, great retail, bike lanes, a safe downtown. These are all investments that we're planning to advance that. TIF 101 basics. We've done this many times before. We put a TIF in place The existing taxing stakeholders continue to get the same taxes they're getting as the day the TIF gets in place. It's the increased value that is created by investment in the project that then gets cycled back and put into the project. So if we think about it in graph form, there's that base on the bottom and the incremental value for the period that the TIF exists. What is different about what we're doing here is typically the city has done these for individual projects. We have a hotel, for example, that comes in. They say we want to develop a hotel and put $50 million into it, but we have a gap. We say, okay, you're going to make this big investment. We'll give some of that increased value back to you over 30 years in a share of that increased tax revenue. They'll invest that in the project to fill their gap. What's different here are three things. First, we are capturing the natural increase in property value across a broad area downtown here. Two, we are generating revenue not just for one project, but for multiple projects and for only public infrastructure. And three, this is going to be a remote TIF, so we can use proceeds anywhere in the city. This is a list of the type of public improvements that we can use out of this particular type of TIF. You see, we're thinking here about utilities, streets, parks, parking facilities that we'll be using. You want to talk about Cincinnati?
Sure. Good afternoon, everyone. As Jeff mentioned earlier, this isn't new to the state of Ohio. Cincinnati and Columbus have both used these TIF districts to really be an economic development engine for their cities. So a couple examples: in Cincinnati, the Downtown Over the Rhine TIF has funded various projects, things like streetscape improvements, development of a pedestrian plaza. Their public market receives income from their TIF. Also been used for infrastructure improvements to public streets to support their casino construction. They've used proceeds from their TIF to support their Uptown Gateway District and development. So they've generated hundreds of millions of dollars from their TIF districts that have been able to be reinvested in public improvements. Similarly, in Columbus, they have the Easton TIF, which was originated upon the opening of Easton in the late 90s and was just recently expanded for another 30 years. Throughout the lifetime of that TIF extension, that TIF will support 15,000 jobs and generate over $8 million a year in non-school revenue that can be reinvested in the community. And then finally, similarly, in Columbus, they have the Arena District TIFs, where they use a combination of project TIFs and district TIFs to support mixed-use development. This TIF is projected to bring 3,200 new jobs and $6.5 million a year in tax revenue to Columbus. So, the Shore to Shore TIF district is really this essential source of funding for major, again, public improvement projects to transform the city and benefit residents in every, ward and throughout the region. We're looking at gaining dynamic, world-class, accessible network of public parks that improve the quality of life for residents, people who live and work downtown, visit downtown, and also build on Cleveland's identity as a waterfront city. We need to ensure that our downtown remains a vibrant center of jobs and commerce that attracts businesses and visitors by creating this accessible new public space. We're also creating a space that'll support the city's budget and ability to provide quality services. And then these public improvements will spur private investment in Cleveland, which we believe will lead to more residents, more housing, more shopping, safer streets, new ways to enjoy our city, and importantly, new sources of revenue.
We also believe that we will be able to continue to leverage funds that are created in our downtown to support Cleveland's neighborhoods. We are going to be working with our council to support implementation of our Park and Rec Master Plan, but the idea here is to grow proceeds downtown enough that we can use them not just downtown, but in neighborhoods. And really, there are a lot of reasons to do this right now. We've been looking at data from the Urban Institute, which show that Cleveland ranks near dead last among 100 major cities in terms of private investment over the last decade. And we've seen a lot of other cities pass us by in that time. This is a tool in our economic development tool belt that has been collecting dust that we have never used. The moment is now with federal opportunities to be able to move forward. So we've defined a TIF district area that encompasses the majority of downtown. It stretches from the lake to the north. to the river to the east, or sorry, to the inner belt to the east, to the river to the south, and dips a little bit into Ohio City and the west. The blue that you see on your screen are existing TIFs. They will not be impacted by this. And as we've done the research on this, we've tested a couple of things. One is we know that when there are major public infrastructure investments, it drives private investment. And we've tested that out in terms of the impact that those public infrastructure projects have had on land. So as we look at three of the, and certainly one of them in particular, the Euclid Corridor, the Health Line, I wouldn't be here today if that investment hadn't been here. I had the privilege of serving Midtown. That was a $200 million investment in public infrastructure that drove $10 billion of investment along the Euclid Corridor. But if we look at Detroit Shoreway, if we look at Opportunity Corridor, we look at Euclid Corridor, we look at land value increase over the last 12 years in an area tightly connected to those investments, we've seen massive year-over-year increase in land value, ranging from 8% to 84% annually over the last 10 or 12 years. As we look at citywide, we've seen about a 2.6% annual increase. And within the district that we've defined, about a 3% increase. And the hypothesis here is that if we take some of this money and invest up front, it will drive that increase higher, creating more economic value. And so we've studied and looked at what can we generate if we take the increase and invest it back to create more increase. And I think we've set a baseline of at a minimum of 3.5% growth. And frankly, if we're only at 3.5%, this will not have worked. Up to 5.5%. And the reality is nobody knows exactly what that growth is going to be. But our hypothesis, proven by data, is that when we make big public infrastructure investments that bring in private investment, we have private investment that has said to us, if you make these public infrastructure investments, we will come in and we will invest billions of dollars of private investment in the core of our downtown. Growth will happen. And so if property value in the district grows at 3.5% annually, we will generate net over 42 years. I'll come back to the 42 in a minute, $3.3 billion. That's over 42 years. Today's dollars, closer to 750 or 800 million. If it grows at 5.5%, it will generate $7.5 billion. That's not all money that's available to us today. That's not all money that we're going to go and spend at one time. This is a long-term project. And the reason for the 42 years, the term of this TIF is 30 years. There are several TIF extensions in downtown that the city and our council extended at the end of last year. Those have another 10 or 12 years before the first 30-year term kicks in. So this is taking the TIF district plus those extensions to get to those dollars. And this is critical because we will take that future stream of revenue and do a number of things with it. One, we can work with a partner like the port to issue bonds. And we've started to look at what that generation could look like over time. Again, not all at once because we don't know what value is going to be there, but over a period of time. We can also use it to pursue a variety of streams of state and federal funding. And in many ways, having this local match is the critical piece for us to be able to go and unlock the state and federal funding moving forward. One of the examples that we've been looking at very closely is Kansas City. Kansas City has worked with the federal government, with the Department of Transportation, and secured $15 billion of federal loans for a variety of transit and transit-oriented development projects. All of the projects that we're contemplating in this TIF district are transit or transit-oriented development. And the potential here in the future for us to leverage these dollars to attract more federal money, to attract more state money, to invest in the city, and to create a lot of private investment is very large. Obviously, and I know the reason that we're here today is to talk a little bit about this, the impact on other taxing jurisdictions. As I mentioned earlier, this does not impact any current taxes collected. Natural value increase on voted levies is not impacted. It is only future growth. And again, that growth won't happen without making these investments. And we believe that, and I'll have some data on this on the next slide, that the private investment, the jobs that are going to happen from these investments here are going to more than offset the potential future loss of revenue, and that these projects that we are going to advance are going to be good for the city, are going to be good for the region, or be consistent with the mission of all of these taxing entities. This is a breakdown, which I'm sure you're familiar with, of where current tax revenue goes. 59%, the largest portion to the schools, then to the city, then to the library, then Tri-C, and then the variety of county social services on down. And as we've looked at just the developments that we have on the table, there we go. If we look at just the development that we have on the table, and this is taking preliminary economic development impact estimates from the master plan that we envision at the lakefront and Bedrock's master plan, it will generate close to 49,000 jobs over the next 15 years, $436 million of MBE and FBE construction spend, at a total economic impact, including taxes, of $5.2 billion, including over $3 billion of sales tax, close to $2 billion of income tax, and nearly $200 million of hotel tax. So again, if we make these public infrastructure investments, leveraging that future growth to bring the private investment, there is substantial economic benefit. The schools will be kept whole. The city, as it traditionally does, will maintain this as a non-school TIF. And so just to clarify as we wrap up, a couple things that this does and does not do. It does not impact any existing TIFs. It does not raise taxes. It does not prevent us from later taking a piece of land within the district and doing a vertical TIF, a project TIF for a project. This is, again, a TIF overlay. We're not spending any money right now. Any future allocation or spending of dollars or issuance of debt, our city council will have to authorize separately. It does not cost anybody anything out of pocket. This is all future revenue. It does not send money to private developers, and by virtue of the restriction on public improvements, it cannot. And our legislation is also explicit that we cannot use this for sports stadia. And so the legislation that is in front of our council right now simply defines this district, defines the geography, sets the base value, and allows us to come back to our council. And we believe this is going to be critical, that we need to start making some critical investments to change the trajectory of our region. We continue to be zero growth. Our downtown, like all of the downtowns, continues to struggle to recovery. We have incredible waterfront assets that have incredible economic value that we have not utilized, and that this is a pathway to doing that, and in doing that, to generating substantial taxes to benefit all taxing jurisdictions and to generating substantial value for our residents and for our businesses. That's my presentation, Councilman. Happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much. Questions by my colleagues? Ms. Conwell.
Thank you. Through the chair to Jeff, I've circled a couple of, so the project timeline, when is your projected timeline for this? I know you're talking about multiple projects, but in your mind starting out, is it 50 years, 30 years, what?
Through the chair to the councilwoman, I think we are hoping to get going on projects as soon as possible. We have multiple projects that are in the planning stages right now, advancing the drawings. You know, the first phase of the Riverfront project is going to be before our planning commission in the next month. We are wrapping up the master plan for the lakefront and for the North Coast Connector in the next 2 months. We have engaged the North Coast Waterfront Development Authority. So these are all moving forward. There are active conversations happening at the state and in Washington, D.C. for matching funding. So our hope is that this TIF district will go into place this spring, that the city may look at potential bond issuances in the first half of the year to start funding some of this public infrastructure.
And through the chair, how long will this specialized TIF be in place? What was,
Through the chair to the councilwoman, 30 years.
the two TIFs that you spoke about in Columbus, the Easton and the Arena, is our shore to core to shore project similar to those two? Whereas they have two, will our one kind of encompass that?
Through the chair to the councilwoman, are you asking geographically?
No, because you talked about the two different, not necessarily geographically, but just encompassing all the projects that you want to do.
Through the chair to the councilwoman, it's the same legal mechanism and how it's created.
So for the record, Council President Jones has joined the meeting. Thank you.
A couple more, Councilman. What impact will this have on the struggling homeowners, if any?
Through the chair to the councilwoman, the majority of the area within the TIF district is non-single-family residential or non-owned residential. It's mostly rental. So we believe this will not have impact in that downtown area. But we do believe that through the investments that we hope to make in improving parks and rec across neighborhoods and improving waterfront access, that it will help quality of life issues within the city.
Okay, and I think I had one more through the chair. So on page 19, you talked about doesn't go to private developers, sport arenas. So this TIF district will not impact Tri-C or schools or anything like that?
Through the chair to the councilwoman, the schools will not be impacted. They will continue to get all of the increase. Tri-C and the other taxing entities, including the county, will get the base value that they currently get today, but will not get the increase in value in taxes generated in the district.
So I'm trying to wrap my head around TIFs. So the previous TIFs that we have in place, they will not be allowed to go up and increase because we have this other TIF. I'm just trying to think, so if Tri-C can't benefit from this new TIF, is there any way that they're getting an increase in the older TIFs that we have, if you kind of understand what I'm...
Yeah, through the chair to the councilwoman, when any of those older TIFs burn off at the end of their 30-year period, all of the taxing jurisdictions, including Tri-C, get the full benefit of that increase. I think our belief with Tri-C and the other taxing jurisdictions is that, one, they will benefit through the increased taxes that we're generating within the district, and two, that this is about 3.5% of the assessed value in the county, that this will help lift property values not just in downtown, but in the county to benefit those other taxing jurisdictions.
This is not something that's going to the voters. It's going to be voted on by City of Cleveland Council.
Through the chair to the councilwoman, correct.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Yes, Ms. Turner.
Thank you, through the chair. Can you pull up the slide that had all the arrows reaching out to the different neighborhoods? And my question is, yeah, there we go. So, some communities around Cleveland have received more investment over the years than other communities. And I'm wondering, is there some kind of formula that would determine investments by communities? Those that have received upgrades recently, will they receive the same amount of money as the other neighborhoods, or is there a plan or strategy to do more investment in some of the traditionally gentrified or communities that haven't received some of those investments over the last, decade or so?
Through the chair to the councilwoman, in many ways, it's too early to answer that question. I think our strategy thus far has been to say, for the money that we're able to take out of downtown and spend in neighborhoods, we are, as a city, working right now on a park and rec master plan, and we will rely on the recommendations in that master plan to prioritize funding. Ultimately, that's going to be a longer conversation, I think, with our council in terms of both where the money goes and how much money and at what period of time we'll be able to spend outside of the core. Because the core of this strategy is invest in the public infrastructure downtown to drive that property value enough that we can take some more out.
Okay, because you've been doing that. You've been investing
We have.
in the core in downtown, and some of the communities further away from the core have, I won't say been disinvested, but not as much. And so I know the mayor ran on a platform that he would increase investments, for example, in the southeast side, Cleveland. I live in Shaker, near Shaker Square and the Buckeye communities, which are partly in my district that I share with Councilwoman Conwell. So I'm wondering if this will address specifically that campaign promise.
Yeah, through the chair to the councilwoman, it's a really good question, and I don't mean to deflect. I think with respect to the TIF district, we still haven't fully fleshed that out yet. I think with respect to many of the other strategies that articulated earlier on, we've invested $50 million in gap financing for housing, much of it on the east side. We're putting $15 million out on the street via partner organizations for home repair and home rehab. We've got $15 million specifically dedicated in Lee Harvard, Union Miles, and Mount Pleasant. We've got a $50 million site fund, which we focused on revitalizing and getting sites back up and bringing businesses on, and the mostly focused on the east side. So I think it's for our administration, it is recognizing that we have communities in the east side that continue to be redlined, and we need to think about how to prepare those neighborhoods for investment in a way that doesn't create displacement pressures, that residents in those neighborhoods can benefit. And that involves holding our banks accountable. It involves kind of getting the conditions ready for private investment to go into those neighborhoods. So this, I think, is an adjacent strategy, but I think it's many others, and I'm happy to kind of talk about the broader strategies that our teams are working on in terms of southeast side and the east side.
Okay. Thank you. I'm glad to.
Sorry, if I could add one more
Sure.
thing to the councilwoman through the chair. I want to emphasize too just how long-term this strategy is. This is a 42-year project that we're undertaking today. And so when we're thinking about these public investments, right, these are projects that are going to take, years, in some cases decades to finish. And then all of the positive benefit of those public improvements will be felt probably not by us within this decade, and it will be felt, further down the line. So, when Chief Epstein says we haven't really talked about it, how to make that allocation, it's because we're thinking about this as a 42-year-long project, and, where do those benefits really kick in for the neighborhoods?
Thanks for that clarification. Appreciate that. Thank you.
Councilman Kelly.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Through the chair to Mr. Epstein, I have two questions. I believe that Section 3 of the legislation introduced to Cleveland City Council has an effective date of December 31st, 2023. Why is it backdated to then?
Through the chair to the councilman, there's a triennial restatement of value that started year-end 1/1/24, and I think we're hoping to capture some of that to help hopefully accelerate the pace at which we can spend money on these improvements.
Okay. And also, is there going to be some type of a public accounting or report that would show the money that is generated by this and where that money is spent?
Through the chair of the councilman, absolutely. We will be, I'm sure, reporting back to our council regularly. Every dollar that is spent will be allocated and approved by our council and go through our law department, our contracting, all of that.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Councilman Tron, followed by Council President.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Through the chair, it looks like Cleveland's going to get hit the hardest by this. Is that correct? With the 13%? At least that's the property tax distribution currently, according to this, is the school is not going to get hit, the 59%. But the next biggest one is the orange block.
Through the
is
chair to the
13%.
councilman, correct.
Yeah, so you're going to get hit for all of this gain. The city of Cleveland will get zero benefit from the gain as far as on the property tax. Is that correct?
Through the chair to the councilman, our general fund will not get any of the gain, but we'll have these dollars to spend on public improvements.
Okay, so where will the actual benefit come to the city of Cleveland?
Through the chair to the councilman, through the increased jobs, the increased taxes that come along with those jobs and development, through the attraction of residents, businesses, visitors to our downtown, through the improvements to the quality of life for our residents and their ability to use and access and leverage the waterfronts.
So you're anticipating, and I thought I heard the number was 40 years this is going to run for, this economic activity?
Through the chair.
Not for the TIF,
Through
but
the
for
chair
the-
to the councilman, the TIF is 30 years.
Right.
And we're looking at a 42-year period based on the
Okay,
extensions.
so 42 years. On the job creation piece is just for the 30 years of the TIF? Is that what I just want to make sure I'm using the right
Yeah,
numbers.
through the chair to the councilman, yes.
Okay, so roughly 50,000 jobs over a 30-year period of time. Is that what I'm understanding to be correctly? And so where do those jobs get allocated? How much of it is construction of the 50,000? I just rounded 50. I gave you credit for another 12,000 job on that. How much, another 2,000. How much of that 50,000 is going to be going towards construction jobs versus permanent jobs in the city of Cleveland?
To the council member, through the chair, I would have to get back to you with exact figures. I want to say over 50% are construction jobs. I don't remember exactly how much, though.
Okay, so the result of after the TIFs and all this is done for the 30 years, there's going to be roughly 25,000 jobs that are going to be impacted by this, if I'm understanding correctly. Do we have a timeline as far as when those 25 permanent, because construction jobs are construction jobs. They're great jobs, they're phenomenal.
Yep.
But when 2 years into the project is done, so is that job. So of the 25,000 remaining jobs, what is the timeline that those come in?
Through the chair to the councilman, I think that would depend on the pace of construction and the pace of absorption and the development that happen in the projects.
Okay,
The sooner we can make these public infrastructure investments, the sooner the vertical investments can come, the sooner we would have those jobs. I don't know if in the in-plan studies, they laid out a specific timeline.
Well, based on, unfortunately, when you give me an answer, then it allows me to answer the question, So pace, what is the pace of those 25,000 jobs becoming permanent jobs that you have forecasted in there, based on your construction of the stuff? Is this a 2-year project, 5-year project? All 30 years are going to be taken up before we get the build out?
Through the councilman, through the chair of the councilman, I would, if pressed, say between 10 and 30 years.
Okay,
It's not a
so-
2-year.
Okay, so we should look to the jobs. And the reason why I'm asking is because those jobs, which you love to have, create some burdens on the county too. And so if we're losing the tax revenue from the new people moving in, which is a great thing, coming into these jobs and being permanently within this district, we have some responsibilities that those individuals are going to be, those 25,000 new people, because the city of Cleveland right now is running, you're about 300,000, I think, to head count in the city.
340 or 350.
What's that?
Closer to 340 or 350.
Yeah, okay, so roughly, not quite 10%, but 8% new people are coming to the city of Cleveland as a result of this activity. And the county does pick up costs and expenses for those individuals. How do you envision we're going to make up to cover the cost of supporting those 25,000 people?
Through the chair to the councilman, increased tax benefit that come through sales tax, that come through other taxes generated by that economic activity.
Okay, so we're not going to pick it up through the normal, on your pie chart, we're not going to pick it up, any of it coming through this, through the property tax value of any of those 25,000 people working, and I hope some are going to be living here too, to be honest, in the respect. But even if you're building permanent housing stock, which I hope some of this is housing stock, you said it was, you don't have a lot factored in for permanent housing stock, it's all rentals and things of that nature, which I'd love to have people buying condominiums and actually living downtown. None of those are going to get the benefit for purposes of the county, are they? Will they?
Through the councilman, my comment about selling versus renting is the existing nature of downtown.
Right.
I think certainly the goal out of these developments will be that we create more home ownership opportunities or condo ownership opportunities within the city.
Well, any of the property that's currently, we have about 15,000 people, I think, living, 18,000 someplace in that range, living in downtown Cleveland now?
22.
22? Oh, fantastic. I wouldn't keep up on track. I knew we were about 18, I think. That's great. Those are mainly rental property. But some of those are targeted to be flipped, I believe, within the next, hopefully, 5 to 8 years into permanent housing stock, condominiums and things of that nature.
To the councilman, some are, but a relatively small percentage. You know, it's a separate, we could have a separate conversation on the lack of financing opportunities for condo markets in downtown Cleveland, which is a big issue. But yes, I mean, I think our goal as administration across the entirety of the city is to work to create more home ownership opportunities, whether those are condos or single-family homes, and that will certainly be true for our efforts on the waterfronts.
Well, we'll keep our fingers crossed that that group of the feds that are predicting 6 rate reductions will make that financing easier. I don't think it's going to happen quite 6, maybe 3, 4. But let's assume that makes it more attractive for people to be buying permanent housing stock. Will we get blocked out? Will this block out the valuation of when that goes into a condominium and it gets sold and individuals then have to pay taxes on their own individual property? Will the TIF affect that 22,000 people, which I hope we get half of them move into permanent condominiums?
Through the chair to the councilman, for the increased value, yes, it would, of property tax, it would.
Well, the property tax value probably shouldn't increase because currently the landlord is paying that property tax value. And if it goes into a permanent housing stock, it might go up some, but I would like to hope it would, for the benefit of the taxpayer, it doesn't go up too much. But if it's going from rental property, landlords paying tax, to homeowners, those will now go to the homeowner. Are they protected by the TIF as far as what they pay?
Through the chair to the councilman, I don't know enough technically about what happens with property taxes when a apartment rental building converts to condo in terms of how the taxes work to answer that.
Okay, and the reason I'm asking, majority of my questions are, what's the burden, what's the load coming to the county that's going to hit over here? Because we're not going to get any of that tax money to cover the cost of those 25,000 people, which it's great to have them, but there's a cost associated with it.
To the councilman through the chair, 2 things I'd note. Just one, for clarification, the TIF doesn't affect the property tax rate that the individual homeowner pays, right? It doesn't change what they're paying. It just kind of changes where those property taxes go. The other thing I want to note too is you showed this chart. This chart, all of these entities go back to collecting this amount at the expiration of the TIF. So when we're looking at full-time permanent jobs, if it takes 10 to 30 years to get those jobs in place, once you hit that 30-year mark and this TIF expires, this tax distribution rate goes back to the way it is.
And it's a good point, because you're telling us that a lot of this is not going to take place for 10 years. So therefore, in theory, it's only going to be a 20-year TIF is for all intents and purposes for some of them. And if you average it out, it's probably only going to be 12 to 15 years, because you're not even going to finish it in that length of time, and some of it's going to be up permanent. Okay, very good, thank you.
Council President.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And good morning, Jeff. Good morning. My question is, I just need a little clarity. How does this TIF impact the future revenues of our future HHS levies? Can you just give us a little clarity on that?
Through the chair to the council president, for future levies, I believe that we continue to get the tax levy on the base value today before the TIF goes into place, but not on any increased value.
Okay, so we still get the base, but we will not share in the increase. Okay. Just kind of curious, obviously, I've heard about this recently, but was there any conversation around this? Was it done totally within Cleveland? Was the administration made aware that this was happening? Was there buy-in, conversation, negotiation? Just curious. Just
Through the chair to the council president, the administration had conversations, our administration, with both county council staff and county council administration prior to introduction.
Prior to introduction. Okay. Okay. Obviously, we know how important our HHS dollars are, so it's certainly a challenge. It's a good cause, but certainly an impact on the HHS levy.
Yeah, through council president, the councilman, I absolutely agree, and these entities are hugely important, and certainly don't read this as the Bibb administration in any way saying that HHS is not important, because we believe it's important. This is more of a question of how do we grow the pot, and how do we get ourselves into a position where we have more tax dollars. Right now, we have less tax dollars. We have costs going up. We're fighting over less and less. And the idea here is to make concentrated public infrastructure investments to drive a lot more value and drive growth in the city of Cleveland and in the county. And that's the play here. I mean, we certainly hope that at the end of the day, when we look back on this in 30 years, that the city and the county and HHS and the health of our residents are in a better place then than they are today.
Okay, thank you.
So we are now going to hear from Katie Gallagher, who is going to give us some information that the county has put together on potential impacts. Thank you very much, Jeff, and to you as well. And hopefully you'll stick around, so if there's any further questions that come out of this presentation, we might bring you back up here for a bit.
Could I just ask one question? This is very relevant
Sure.
to what we're as you know, the county owns the Justice Center and the jail, and when that building and site is opened up, there's going to be, I believe, it's going to be one of the best economic development sites between Cleveland and between Chicago and New York. Would that site be something that would get the benefit of this TIF when we put a Fortune 100 company on that parcel, or would they be better off to get their own individual TIF that would be unique to that property?
Yeah, to the councilman, first of all, I agree with you. I think it will absolutely be a prime redevelopment site, and certainly the improvements that we contemplate making through this TIF district will strengthen the value of that site. I would say it depends on what the needs are of that particular development project. Because of the nature of the TIF district, these can only be used for public infrastructure improvements. So if there were dollars available and were needed for the project, for utilities, streets, et cetera, but my guess is that based on the needs of that project, it will probably be better off taking it out of the TIF district and doing a project TIF, because it has more flexibility on the dollars. But we would certainly welcome that conversation. We'd be happy to have that conversation.
Well, the county owns that property.
Understand.
And so if there's a parking garage that has to go underneath there,
Yep.
which is one of the, clearly, if we need to demo it, the county still owns it, that would be beneficial to it. If the land acquisition, don't have to have because we own it, but some of these other elements look like they line up very nicely with it, whether or not, it's just more of a question of whether the benefits go to being part of this district or having it specifically associated when we put that property on the market. Thanks.
Okay, we'll call forward to Chief Gallagher.
Good afternoon, everyone. Katie Gallagher. I am the Chief of Operations and Innovation for the Executive's Office, and I do have a PowerPoint. Well, thank you for having the administration here. I'd first like to thank Joe Machula and Brian Dunn, who have helped me run the numbers for this, as well as the GIS team who've put together this GIS. So if you guys would like the link to this, this sort of helped us take a look at the overlay district and kind of hone down on the parcels. So 3,027 parcels are within this district, and potentially 2,281 parcels will be eligible with this overlay when you take out the parcels that are currently TIFed and those that are exempt, as well as there's 158 parcels that are delinquent currently, so they would be ineligible at this current time. Again, if you would like this GIS link so you can kind of dive down, we could send that to you. So looking through these numbers, we looked at just the historical set for 2023. And you can look at the gross amount there. But when we're looking at a 1% pilot, the complete 1% increase for Cleveland, when you take the residential portion and the commercial portion and you exclude the schools portion, is about $377,000 a year. And so we talk about initially, you know, what are those legal rights of this TIF district and what are our legal rights? The only one that is legally permitted to exempt is the school district in this current scenario. There are, under the ORC, I know this has been brought up before, the ability to exempt certain levies like HHS, but that is not the current TIF that's filed in front of us. That would only be a C1, and we only have 3 of those in the county. So the current areas that we're looking for executive office, the highlighted in the red, these are the 2 that would most be impacted. So if you break that down for residential and commercial, this is where we would see that real loss of the incremental growth year over year. So as you can see, it's not a huge portion, and when we are giving you these numbers, we're giving you at 1%. So you're saying there are assumptions at 4.5% to 5.5%, some areas even more. So you have to do the calculations yourself. This is really a crystal ball. We don't know what valuations would look like, so we take last year's, we do a set amount of what that would look like for 1%. So you have to increase whatever the percentage is per year of our valuation growth. As you could see, they put the historical cap for last year because of the sectennial update. So that will be presumably a very large increase for that valuation for this upcoming year. So at 1%, and then there's the compounding factor of each year. So again, we only put that in front of you because we want to be very conservative in our approach, so you could take the 1% and do calculations on your own for general fund and debt services. As far as the health and welfare and the health services, the HHS levies that are currently on the books, Jeff is right to say that we will continue to collect those same amounts. That is not where we see incremental value growth. That's why we have to go out for new HHS levies. So when you see that loss right there, that's essentially a redistribution of those taxes to the rest of the county as far as home buyers. And so just to kind of sum up those general fund and the debt services where we'll see the most impact, this is the 1% growth, taking into consideration what the valuation change was for last year. So again, calculate that out on whatever percentage of the valuation increase and compounding factor. That is the areas where we'll see the largest capture. And then there's the TIF extensions that were just filed in the city of Cleveland last year. And so again, not all of these TIFs are up. Some don't expire for a while, 10, 12 years. And so these numbers are capturing, you could see the county general fund, 104,000 if you took last year's numbers, and 33,000 for the debt services category. But these, again, don't expire for another 10 years, so compounding that out and the valuation changes of what those TIF extensions look like for these particular properties, the Lower Euclid, the Steelyard Commons, Veterans, Optima, and Hilton, and what that looks like. So. And then just kind of to capture, I mean, these are primarily the conversations, the same issues that you have brought up with, you know, what does this look like for our HHS levies? So just kind of taking a look at the percentages that Cleveland benefits or where our resources are growing primarily, or they are directed to Cleveland in a large percentage. The blue area, that is a lot of federal and state funding that backs those particular departments in HHS. For the green, that's 100% the HHS levy. And so some of the other general fund issues that come before us where we're going to see a loss of revenue, you know, this is what supports our homeless services, our sheriff's department, our courts, economic development, housing, medical examiner's office. So, you know, at the end of the day, we will see loss from this TIF. You know, we hope that Cleveland is right, that this is a game changer, and that we all come out better for this, and we have a stronger Cleveland base. But that is something that is a crystal ball, and we don't know what that's going to look like. That's it.
Questions by my colleagues?
I don't know if I have a question, Chair, through the chair to Katie. So in realizing that even though we don't know the amounts that we would lose, that it's going to impact our senior and adult services. Number one, did you guys on the administration side had conversations prior to the budget? Did you know about this information before we finalized our budget?
There may have been somebody from our staff that knew about it. We had heard about the TIF extensions at some point, but had not had substantial conversations about the impacts of what this would look like.
And so in seeing that the green areas are the ones that are going to be impacted the most and with the city of Cleveland being the most needy out of the funds, how will this impact them? Will we decrease funding to assist those residents because the city of Cleveland and I just want the thought process.
Sure. Through the chair to Councilwoman Conwell. So the HHS levy will not lose what they are bringing in right now. What may be an issue going forward is just as at one point the county had to increase the levy amount, we're going to have to go to the taxpayers. And so at that point, it's going to be a question of whether levies can get passed. So there's not going to be a decrease in what's going to the HHS levy. But again, that all gets redistributed to the taxpayers throughout the county to make up the difference of the loss.
But we do have increased needs over the years, especially with seniors living longer, you know, with the data that we have. So I think that in 4 years is when we'll have to start having those conversations in regards to if we're going to increase the levy, if it's going to be a need. It's always going to be a need unless we do some good investments in trying to decrease the homelessness, decrease some of those. And we're in the process of doing those strategic plans, so hopefully that will paint a good picture of how we can decrease so we can maybe even out.
Yeah, I mean, hopefully Cleveland is successful and some of the residents that are in current need of these services, maybe these percentages decrease. And if not, I hope that Cleveland is the first one at the table to help to get us a levy passed.
Yeah, but they're talking about 30 years. We won't see Jeff, 30 years for the full potential of seeing, is there some timeline before then that we may see some benefit to Katie's point? Because we're banking on city having,
To the councilwoman, we're going to work as quickly as we can to drive as much positive impact for our residents as we can using this. So yes, I mean, we're going to go as quickly as we can to make these public infrastructure investments and bring private investment into the city that will hopefully yield these other benefits.
So, to Chief Gallagher, I want to see if I'm hearing what you're presenting correctly. The sense I get is that because of House Bill 920, that the amount of money that the HHS levy produces remains fixed.
That is correct.
And so because of that, because less money will be generated in the TIF district that's available for the levy because it's being put into the TIF fund, that the taxes are then raised on other homeowners throughout the county to make up for the difference and get to the number that's to be generated. And as a result of that, it might be harder to pass HHS levies in the future. That's what I'm hearing about the HHS levy. But what I'm hearing about the general fund is that the general fund doesn't work that way. And with the general fund, there will actually be money that we would have gotten otherwise but don't get because it's taken off and put into the TIF fund. Am I hearing this correctly?
You are correct.
And what about the Port Authority, the libraries, and the Tri-C? Do they operate under House Bill 920 or do they operate more like the general fund?
Jeff, do you know the answer to that?
Through the chair, my understanding is they operate under House Bill 920.
Okay.
We'll get Joe Mitchell. I just don't want to give you the bad information.
Bad information. I'm Joe Machula. I work for Fiscal under Mike Chambers. Your question is about those under the umbrella of the county's percentage. We distribute those to the port, the libraries, and everybody else. And just so I'll make sure I'm answering your question correctly, you're asking is that changed, the 920 House Bill credit is what changes, not the amount collected. So in order, if overall value goes down, those entities still get their same amount of money. If they go up, your portion is less because your credit's higher. The only exception to that is the metro parks. They have a 5 mil inside levy, inside millage. So they get that inside 5 mils regardless. But not on the TIF service payment. Make sense?
I think so.
Anything else?
Not at this time. I'm going to go on to Councilman Tron.
So it works just similar like the inside mills would work on a school board, where those inside mills are locked in. I think those are 9, I think, on the school. And so that 5 goes to Metro Parks, but not to the rest of us as far as the inside mills.
On the historic base, yes. On the service payment, anything they were to get gets dispersed to the service payment.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Gallagher, on the 1% you have calculated in here, if that goes to 2%, everything doubles, right? The cost
Correct.
and the deduction and the loss of funds going to these other bodies will grow exponentially as far as 1 goes to 2, 2 goes to 3.
Correct.
And just because this is an assumption made by the executive's office at the 1, that same assumption as far as inflation was made for the 40-year sales tax increase that we just did, and that was factored at 2% inflation. Twice what you have on this sheet of paper. So it's just.
I did, yeah. I
The one
did-
is only just for our ease of our purposes.
Yes.
It is not a belief that it's
No.
only going to be 1%.
No, not at all. We do not believe it will be 1% at all. Again, though, we have to look retro to see what even this looks like, and there's an assumption that we don't know what the percentage increase is going to be, especially for this sectennial update where, you're going to have a large valuation change. So it's for ease of calculating numbers, assuming that, Jeff's hoping that this is a success at, at least 5.5%. So I think that that's what a success marker for them. But as you saw through their presentation, there are areas at Cleveland that saw upwards of 12, 13, 14% in certain periods of time.
Okay, I just want to make sure I was understanding your chart it is not a suggestion it's going to be 1%. It is only to give you a multiplier so you can multiply 1 or 2 or 3 or some other number.
Correct.
To take that $194,000 and multiply that.
What the administration didn't want to do is pretend like we knew what the future held.
Yeah,
Right?
that's okay. I get.
And put out a number that everyone's stuck to. And we just wanted to say 1%, and you guys are all smart enough to do the math.
But I'm just wanted to be consistent with what the administration has already assumed in other places, not this, but on what we just passed as far as extending the sales tax increase, or sales tax continuation. There, we factor 2% in for inflation. But if you actually go and look at what took place down the street at the convention center, that actually came in at almost 3%. So I think everybody ought to be looking at this. This is probably $400,000 to $600,000 impact on this, as far as to be real, at least close to what we're seeing in other places within assumptions in this. And so I just want to make sure, and that will ripple. All of these bodies are going to get that impact out there, whether it's the Health and Human Service levy or whatever. And as I think the chairman said, if that gets impacted for those 25,000 people that are new, then everybody else is picking up the tab as far as what's going to go on in each one of these areas, because their taxes are going to go up as a result of this. Is that logical? That this has to be made up someplace, because Health and Human Service levy is going to have to raise the exact amount of money, and if there aren't people that are making this contribution, it's going to go someplace else, I believe, in the county. And it's going to get spread over the other 1.2, 1.3 million people in the county. Seems to me. Thank you.
So,
I may be misunderstanding incorrectly. My understanding on the currently voted levy, that regardless of what happens with natural increase or decrease of value in the TIF district, the same amount is going to that levy.
Yeah, it's the levies down the road, which is
The levies down
the
the
ones
road, yes.
that Mr. Miller, Chairman Miller was referring to. I mean, if we're not even going to get, if the first buildings aren't even going to get built for 10 years, then it's not going to have any impact for, I believe, a lot of this stuff until those first structures get built and the economic value has been added to it.
So, I have a general comment, which is that there's things that the city does that impacts the county. This is going to have some impacts on the county. There are things that the city does that benefits the county. For example, the city is currently investing money in seasonal homeless shelter programs, which the county has also been working on, and it really helps us to have that collaboration. And so what I'm suggesting is rather than looking at these things in isolation, that that the mayor and the county executive need to sit down together and look at all the ways that the city and the county affect each other, and work out a program that overall is fair and where we work together to make progress, consulting with the city council and the county council in the process, and hopefully we can come up with some common understandings as to how to do these things in a way that enable the economic development to take place, for the health and human services to be provided, including doing what the chairperson is saying, Ms. Conwell, that we need to reduce the amount of homelessness, reduce the amount of children that are not prepared for kindergarten, reduce the amount of trauma, and hopefully head off some of this stuff so that we do better in the future. And so hopefully we can work together on these things and make progress. Any other comments or questions?
Quick question.
Councilman Gallagher.
I would say to piggyback off of that, since we've been here as a council and in this new form of government, we paid Cleveland for a hole in the ground and put a convention center there and allowed them to put their name on our convention center. We carry the note. We build a hotel. We carry the note. Our employees are basically all down here. We're helping out. We carry the note on the ballpark and the arena, because what we were told, at least I remember being told, Cleveland couldn't do it. I don't believe that was truthful. So we carry that note. We did this deal here while it was rent to own, we still carried it. So we're putting in, and we're putting in what we do. Now we're patrolling your streets downtown because Cleveland can't do their own job. We did a deal with the jail, and granted, it's not Cleveland's fault. We got submarined in-house on a deal for the jail to take care of the prisoners that has bit us in the backside, and Cleveland won't even come to the table. So my point being, while we're here doing a lot, I see Cleveland doing very little. And I understand we don't have a say in this. And a TIF done correctly is really a good thing. But as we have heard, the bite is not going to be in really Cleveland. The bite's going to be in Cuyahoga County and the rest of the people that live in this county. I would suggest you take this, wrap it up, put a bow on it, take it back to City Hall and tell them to get their asses down to negotiations on this jail deal, or it's going to go bad. Mark my words, it'll go bad. I don't want it to go bad. During the hearings when we did that deal, and Cleveland kept pushing back, and if I'm them, I'm doing it too. I said, we don't want to lose any money, but we don't want to make any money off of you. We want to be a collaborative. Well, we've been collaborating, and City Hall has not been a good partner. So I hope with this new administration 1 year in, and this administration 1 year in, that we have some form of going forward. Because I'm kind of sick and tired of collaborating from one side. We all see it coming down the pike with the Browns and the stadium and everything else. And I'm not saying that that's bad. I'm not even saying the county shouldn't get involved in some fashion. But not until the other stuff's taken care of. So please take that back.
Through the chair to Councilman Gallagher, I just want to, back up Cleveland a little on this. We have been in conversations about a lot of the things that you're complaining about, and there has been a good faith effort to have a partnership to clean up some things that need to be cleaned up. And we are continuing to have the conversations and giving them the facts to remedy some of this stuff.
And believe me, I appreciate that, but it's been a year.
Okay, anything else?
Yes.
Yes, Councilwoman Turner.
I was wondering if public transportation projects are eligible for the public improvement component of this proposal?
The councilwoman through the chair, absolutely, and public transit improvements are a big piece of this. We've got Amtrak and RTA on the lakefront, both underutilized. We've got RTA at the riverfront underutilized, and we certainly hope to improve that. They're core pieces of both plans.
Thank you.
Okay, anything else? Ms. Conwell?
On that point, well, to Jeff, through the chair, transportation, they're going to put in their own funds as well? The TIF is just going to cover portions?
Through the council, through the chair to the councilwoman, the Department of Transportation? We hope so, yeah. We're having those conversations on an ongoing basis.
So we're not going to move forward on things like that if we're paying for the whole thing, correct?
Through the council,
You
to the
guys
chair, we
pay
won't
for
have
the
enough
whole-
money to.
Okay, well, thank you very much, and we'd like to really thank you for taking the time to come and share with us. It's an important issue that affects all of us, and we appreciate your coming down. So, to my colleagues, the second item on the agenda, which will only take a few minutes, is that I'd like to call your attention to the draft Finance and Budgeting Committee 2023 year-end report. And it has 3 sections. The first section highlights major events for the past year, which was the completion of the 2024 to 25 biennial budget and the extension of the last 0.25% on the sales tax and the placement of the HHS renewal levy on the ballot. And then secondly, we have some year-end financial numbers, and I would stress that Director Parfiowitz was kind enough to provide these to us on a preliminary basis. The numbers are not finalized yet, but I don't think they're going to change much, and so it shows that we currently have general fund reserves in excess of the reserve target, and the same for HHS levy. However, the general fund did have an excess of expenditures over receipts of about $6 million, so that's a little bit of a concern when it comes to long-term sustainability. And then the third section just lists some likely finance and budgeting topics that are going to come up for the year, and I would particularly note that we tend to deal with issues one at a time as they come up, and what we really need is a long-term strategic approach, especially on the large capital items, so that we consider all of them at once and can make the best decisions on which to fully program and which need to be scaled back and which we should let go, consistent with the available resources. So I would just encourage my colleagues to review this document and let me know if you have any suggested additions or revisions, and I will incorporate them into a final document. So I would ask my colleagues if they have any questions or comments about this report or any other miscellaneous business. Ms. Conwell.
I just, Chair, I just wanted to understand the finance and budgeting topics. None of these items listed have a revenue stream put toward it right now.
When it comes like the ones toward the end of the list, the Browns Lease Waterfront Development queue, not yet. Jail construction, yes, it's the sales tax. Justice Center upgrades, probably the same. ERP, no, we don't know about that. So that would be the status of funding sources identified at this time. Okay, anything else? Nothing holding our attention. We are adjourned. Thanks very much, everybody,